Welcome to Money 911, the show where we don't just talk about financial success. We break the mold, shake things up, and ignite your transformation. I'm Kris Miller, your host, and today's episode is all about the future of work and how you can not just survive, but thrive in it. We're talking innovation, talent, and technology that's going to explode your possibilities. Our guest today, the unstoppable Alyssa Borden. She's rewriting the playbook on how we work and how we unlock the potential within our teams. This is going to be a wild ride. Let's dive in. Alyssa, it's fabulous to have you here. I'm so happy that we can have this great conversation.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much for having me, Kris. I'm really excited.
You know, because it's such a time, we were just talking before we hit record how fast things are moving and the world of work is changing so fast. The AI, new tech, new ways of doing business. It's crazy just in the last year. How do you see this playing out? And what do you think is going to be the biggest roadblock standing in the way of businesses crushing the new landscape?
One of the things that I'm seeing already start to play out is that some of the old mindsets and processes that businesses had in place are starting to get in their way to that point on moving quickly. And there's internal resistance, sometimes generated by fear, but also a lot of times just generated by a lack of understanding on the impacts or the ability to make clear decisions and contribute to some of these opportunities. So the more leaders can start to involve their teams and listen and understand, and then push down some of those decisions so that they can get in and experiment and try things, that'll really start to build some of that confidence and the speed. But to my original point, the structures are going to have to change, and the way that people think about and approach their work is really going to have to shift rapidly for people to keep up.
That's so true. And the thing about it is we don't know, we're in new territory, right? We're
Right.
jumping off the cliff and trusting the parachute will go off. There's a lot of like two parallel tracks. There's the good and then there's this other fear, and some of it is very justified when you really know the whole picture. But the talent, you say the talent you need is already building, and it's powerful. How are these leaders when, maybe old school gets stuck there and they're looking outside for answers instead of unlocking the brilliance of all their own teams?
Yeah, I think sometimes it's just human nature. If you can imagine that there's an easy button out there or some magical solution or this amazing person who's going to fix it all for you, it's easy to do. And some of it is also, I think, built in with some of this startup hype and mentality and constant access to information, where I think people have a false sense of what's available in terms of skill set, and it kind of closes them off to the people they have inside. The other interesting factor that I'm seeing is that a lot of HR teams don't necessarily have the same type of access to data or clear data structure and acumen to be able to actually tell that story of who are the people we have inside and what are their true capabilities beyond just check the box performance assessments and things that really don't tell a holistic story of what someone is capable of versus what gets captured in whatever old systems and processes they used in the past. But there's
Yeah,
so much talent inside, hungry to change and make a
right.
difference.
Right. I think it's a huge shift because,
Yeah.
the people, I mean, I would assume already, even without AI, everything is a little bit outdated anyway. And then the AI comes in. I mean, you are cutting edge. You're like on the top of the wave, right? The crest. And really to set up like a map of how to process this, and that's what you're doing, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Trying to help connect that big vision with the reality of the day-to-day work. We know that teams feel overburdened.
Right.
There's never enough resources, right? There's never enough time. We were just talking about that. Time flies. And when you're buried in an organization just trying to check all the boxes and get things done, you never feel like you have enough. So while teams are trying to keep the lights on and keep the businesses running, they're also being asked to kind of try and experiment with all these new things. But the experimentation mindset and structure isn't necessarily there in a lot of organizations. You know, you talked a little earlier about like the risk, but a lot of organizations don't quite have that trust built in with their managers and how they coach and guide, with performance structures and reward structures, so that people actually feel safe to go and try new things in a way that moves them forward and moves the business forward. So there's so many incredible dynamics and opportunities, I think, to help
Yeah.
get people there and build those frameworks.
I think it's fabulous because you're really creating something that's not there. Even here you are saying, yeah, there isn't that great a communication either. So this whole thing can really up level not only, how does a team work with AI or even work together with the HR and have this communication so that everything does build and not crash. Um,
Yeah.
I enjoy, we the enjoyment of C-suite executives, right? And what you do and to drive major transformation, that's what you're doing. And I bet you probably could share like a wow moment or something that's happened where you've shifted the people in their strategy or revenue or culture or stuck in the mudness. Maybe you could share a story of something that you've done.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So my career journey was a little unique. I worked in insurance and financial services and eventually moved into the labor relations space, then into HR business partnership. And in those roles, I really got to sit side by side with finance teams, marketing teams, IT teams, and embed myself in how they do work. And I'll never forget, I was working with one of those teams in finance, and they were kind of challenging that we couldn't track metrics, that we couldn't like tie goals to actual roles. And the reality is, it's one of those things that I kind of assumed was happening. I don't know if you've had this sort of, you go into a business and you're like, I guess I thought they were already doing this. I thought that they were already cascading these goals. And
Right.
so, my job was to say, oh, okay, well, let's start there, right? Because how can people really build their development plans? How can they really contribute and prioritize their time if they don't really know what the key goals are to make those trade offs? So, as I was moving through that, it took many, many months, surprisingly, of stakeholder meetings, one on ones, helping them build frameworks. But I also had to prove the art of the possible, which I know is kind of a buzz phrase, but I was always a big advocate and eventually moved into a full finance transformation role. But through that, I always tell my folks, we don't have to make this hard. We have access to tools inside that any of us could use, but no one had time or it seemed too complicated. So over the course of a week, I just went in, taught myself Power BI. I built a tracker for all of our goals, tagged people in it, right? To try to just say, hey, let me do that hard initial work that seems intimidating and get it started for us to prove that we actually can do this. And then was able to get people to start leveraging that Power BI scorecard into our regular meetings so we could see and visualize how we were doing and then partner on that in real time versus just kind of guessing or making assumptions.
That is so cool. That's great. And it's because we're really talking about outdated structures and the way things are moving. Pretty much everything is outdated. And and it is shocking how corporate structures and businesses are really outdated in what they're doing and because the things are moving so fast. We need another lifetime or something. Just the possibilities just and I'm not any AI, but just the things that I'm seeing, I'm like, I need time just to develop, the personal assistant part of it or all of those things that could weave everything together. So outdated structures, processes that slow everything down. So how are you going to break, you go into a corporation and how are you going to break those chains and get the stuck in the mud leaders to adopt next level frameworks without causing complete chaos?
Yeah, gosh, that is such a great question. And, there is always that balance, I think, of being out in front to prove the art of the possible and inspire and empower, but not losing people and feeling disconnected with them. So that's an art that I've played over time to try to say, okay, I need to be further enough out to show that it can be done, but I don't want to be so distant from the team that they think that I'm not part of them or I don't understand the risks. So I play that balance by getting a lot of feedback. So for me, it's really, again, goes back down to what is our current state? What's the reality of our data? Right? What's the reality of our organizational structure? Where are some of the pain points actually coming into play? And then what are those big things that we aspire to be? Oftentimes the focus is on, well, we just want to implement AI. Well, you can go and you can pay a lot of money and you can spend a lot of time and effort with consultants. But if you haven't really focused on those foundational issues, what are the capabilities and mindsets of my team? Where are they able to make decisions in the organization? How do those things happen? How do they learn and grow and move throughout the org and interact with each other? And where is the data? What is the state of that? So often we layer these solutions on top of really crumbly foundations. And so the way for me, honestly, that I've found is oftentimes when people are coming to me, it's they know that something is already broken. And it's more about they've spent millions of dollars on an implementation that failed, or they've had a reorg going on for 5+ years and right. And just things aren't working and the team is frustrated and they're leaving. And so to me, it's really about telling that story and doing it in a way that doesn't cause negative reactions, right? Or ego to come into play. It's complicated. It's complicated for every business. None of us can predict the future, right? But what we can do is really accept what has happened and isn't working, right? And what are the things we already know that we could build on? If you just start with those simple things and capture them, that alone is progress and will reveal so many different paths forward. Then when you layer on that engagement and empowerment of your people to go and try things, leaders will be amazed with how quickly it'll happen. And they won't have to spend as much money. It quite literally will improve profitability and growth. I can guarantee it when you start to break down some of those dysfunctional systems and structures inside businesses.
That's great. So are you kind of like um, a kamikaze where you go into the corporation and you do an assessment, you're looking for all those pain points, and then you develop, you know, AI or connections or processes? How do you actually do that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, it's really interesting. The first thing for me, yes, is understanding and getting the lay of the land. Each organization is in a different place and they have different goals. And some of them may have really robust change management or project management teams. That's great. That means they don't necessarily need me to play that role. But in other companies, sometimes I do. And being able to play that systems thinking mindset and gather all the data and then keep the project moving and then develop the communication framework. So, yes, I go in, help with the change, assess the change, build out frameworks that work for that team. And then I lean in the way they need me. So I can be an extra set of hands and eyes from an HR perspective, actually doing the work with the team. Or I can kind of be that outside person who is coaching and guiding. But the main goal for me and my main driver is that organizations don't need me long term. Right? They have a great team. The team just needs help, right, to build those skills or get over some humps to reinforce some of these practices. So I'm coaching and advising the whole way along to try to leave behind practices that scale and benefit both the company and the people.
That is so cool. I don't know why that's the image I was getting, but you're kind of like a Ghostbusters, where
Yeah.
we'll have to go to an AI and ask a great kind of like give me the updated version of that for this because you go into the corporation, there's a fire going on. The fire is that people aren't connecting with what's happening or connected with each other or connected with the new systems that they need to develop, right? Or in old
Yeah.
modalities. So it's like a fire.
Mhm.
And I mean you can change it to whatever parallel you want, but you're on call. It isn't like you got to go in and now they got to hire you forever. You can actually go in, fix it, and then and then they follow up with you and you're checking on them. But that way you can hit a lot of help a lot of people that way where you go in, fix it, and right.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because to me, it's not just delivering a beautiful PowerPoint.
Right.
Any consultant can do that, right?
Yeah.
People can download it online. ChatGPT can create that for them. The nuance, right, is in the doing
Right.
and in looking across the table, sitting next to people, reading the room, understanding the complexities and the nuances, and then you're right, like fighting the fire, or and then preventing it going forward, right? We got to spray some
Yes.
fire retardant on everything going forward so that you've got this ability to be a little bit more agile. IT teams and tech leaning companies do this so well. They've got those agile iterative processes down where they're meeting in 5 minute stand ups, they're building things out in 2 week sprints. But the rest of us, we haven't had a chance to practice that. And when we say agile HR or agile finance, it just doesn't connect, right? And so that's my mission as well, is how do we kind of clip some of these processes and then use what's already been proven to work in other functions in other
Hmm.
career fields so that we're all moving in that iterative way. But yeah, you're right. I just say let's go on an adventure together. Like it can be fun, right? It doesn't have to be like fear causing. It doesn't have to cause paralysis. Companies can do this and it can be a way to build that employee commitment, not scare people away. So firefighting with a little bit of adventure and I don't know, skydiving in there as
There you
well.
go. Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. There's a good parallel there, and because those processes of teams and communication, like you said, and you're dropping things like for the average listener like me that or anybody that's listening that's not HR that isn't in that frequency, like oh yeah, okay, we have a 2 week. The way that your communication like break that open a little bit, like that kind of a process that keeps the wheels rolling on that.
Yeah, yeah. So one example I like to share with a lot of people is the budgeting and strategic planning process inside businesses. So
Okay.
I think many people have touched that in a variety of different ways, even if they don't work in accounting and finance, but it's painful. And a lot of these companies, this is like a 6+ month endeavor. Everyone puts together their numbers. They kind of do some estimating on their projects and their headcount, and then they run it up for approval. And then it comes back and goes back and forth over and over and over with manual PowerPoint updates and all of this work. That is an example of a process that doesn't work because it's not iterative. Because you know that the second that final budget gets the seal of approval, the world is going to happen. You can't predict everything. You don't know what's going to fail or not. And so now people's performance is tied to these numbers that now aren't really based in reality but have been codified for the fiscal year. And so that to me is an example of thinking differently about how you do work. If you could blow up that budgeting process and make it more flexible and kind of this ongoing process instead of a one-time event, that's that iterative agile thinking
Mm, right.
that could be put into place in a lot of other examples. In HR, your affirmative action planning.
Mhm.
Okay, well, how can we integrate that into everything we do every day versus just this big lift of a thing that everyone panics and runs in circles and then we go and deliver, right?
Right.
And
Right.
the AI and the data, right? is the huge part of it. Because if you can get that aligned and help people have that kind of technical and data leaning acumen, they'll be finding ways all the time to be able to access that information and clean it and organize so that it's just at your fingertips. It doesn't have to be a debacle, right? Putting these things together, right?
Exactly. Because it always seems like a debacle and confusing when we don't really understand, but you get in it and it's like, oh, okay. Yeah. Why didn't we do this 10 years ago? But definitely, right.
Yeah, exactly. Like, why didn't we? It is kind of fascinating. And then when you think about when time is free,
right.
when AI and data and all these processes and new technologies are working and half of your job goes away. And this is a reality I want everyone to think about because it'll happen to you and me and everyone else. When those transactional things, when you're having a rough day, it's like, oh man, I don't really want to think. I'll just do this busy work today. It has to be done. I'll get it done. When all that goes away and you have to operate at this higher level all the time, actually using the expertise and skills that you were hired for 40 hours a week, instead of half of it being filled with this transactional work, it's a different equation. And people will have to adjust how they organize their time, how they train themselves, how they rest to be able to operate at that higher level as well.
That's a great point. Okay, well, Alyssa, this is the moment that all of our listeners have waited to hear. Right. What is one thing that every leader can do today to make their organization future ready and ignite the change from the inside out?
Be open. I think that having a curious mindset for everyone is the most important thing. If a leader can demonstrate that openness and that flexibility, that translates down into the team and makes space for all of these other changes and experiments that'll need to happen for organizations to change and people to grow.
Fabulous. You are on the cutting edge of all of this. I'm excited to see you download it and manifest it. Tell everybody how they can connect with you and what to watch for.
So I have a website called successbridge.net, or you can connect with me on LinkedIn, Alyssa Borden. I post all sorts of fun videos and things to just get the conversation going. So I'd love to connect with any listeners and just keep talking about this because we're all in it together. And the more we share, the better we'll all get together.
That's it right there. The more we share, the better it gets. Liz, thank you so much for being here. This is a great conversation.
Oh, thank you, Kris. I had so much fun.
All right.
Thanks.
Alyssa, I can't thank you enough for bringing that electric energy and transformative wisdom to Money 911 today. If you're listening, remember, today is not just about managing change. It's about leading it. The future is yours for the taking. Start unlocking the untapped power in your team. Embrace the technologies shaping the next era and make bold moves that will take your business and your leadership to the next level. Stay unstoppable, stay inspired, and let's keep transforming the future together. There's so much to learn about healthy money. I hope today's discussion brings you one step closer to securing and protecting your future. So you can get started on the right foot, go to meetwithkrismeller.com and schedule your free financial fitness strategy session. Thank you for listening, and please subscribe to Money 911 so you don't miss our next episode, which includes health, wealth, and peace of mind.